Hey, it's Foster at IAG Performance, and we recently picked up a Series White STI. I'm really excited that we have this car. It's just 1 out of 500 that were made. So in this video, I'm gonna be talking a little bit more about this car. We're gonna find out, is this just a paint job, or what type of features this car has that make it different than a regular STI, and then we're gonna take the car out to the street and find out how it drives. There's a whole bunch of small visual changes on the Series White STI. The first of which you're gonna notice is the crystal black silica rearview mirrors. It's also got this gloss black side emblem. The biggest change obviously is the ceramic white paint. It's basically just a whiter white. And then moving to the front, it's also got a cherry blossom stripe on the front grille. In the back, it also has a matte black emblem, but really a whole bunch of small changes. So one of the biggest upgrades to the Series White STI is the wheel and tire package. Instead of the regular 18-inch wheels that come standard on the STI, this car now has a 19-inch forged BBS wheel. That means they're gonna be a lot stronger. They also came standard with Cup 2 tires, which are very sticky tires. And if you look at all the marketing Subaru released when they launched this car, it really was oriented towards people who are gonna track this car. Speaking of track focus modifications, the biggest changes you're gonna see with the Series White STI comes in the handling department. They've replaced the standard STI suspension with Bilstein shocks and dampers, and these do have a stiffer spring rate, so they're gonna give the car less body roll and better handling characteristics at the track. In terms of the suspension geometry though, really all that's the same. It's still multi-link in the rear and McPherson in the front. The only other change Subaru made to the Series White underneath the car is it now has more rigid steering rack mounts. It may seem like a small change, but all those little differences really do add up to give this car better handling. Hopping in the interior of the Series White STI, there's not a lot in here that makes it that different than a normal STI. In fact, it's really more about what you don't get. You don't get a badge on the center console letting you know you're in a Series White STI. You also don't get a sunroof for weight savings, since this is more of a track-focused package, and you don't get a spare tire in the rear either. Instead, Subaru gives you a flat tire repair kit, which saves you about 35 pounds, and it includes a can of Fix-A-Flat and a little air compressor. One thing I really do like about the STI though is the fact that it has a very simple bare bones interior. You've got great visibility, it's very driver focused, and although the infotainment system is a little bit dated, I do like the fact that it's not just a huge iPad glued to the dash like a lot of new cars these days. So overall, I do think the interior of the STI has aged pretty well. Under the hood, there's no changes to the EJ25 boxer engine. It still makes 310 crank horsepower, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. There is a ton of aftermarket support for these EJ engines, and if you do want to up the power, you know who to call. All right, we're gonna talk a little bit about my driving impressions. It's springtime in Maryland, so of course it's raining out, but I really can't think of a much better car to be driving a back road with than a STI with all-wheel drive in these slick conditions. So right off the bat, let's talk about my first impressions. Well, everything feels really tight. That's probably due to the fact that this car is pretty much new. It's got 32,000 miles on it, which is pretty low for the age of the car. So the steering feels really tight, the clutch feels really good, it's got plenty of life in it, and the shifter feels really notchy, and the bushings don't feel like they're worn out or anything. So this is a pretty accurate impression of what this car was like to drive new. I can't really say that I feel a big weight difference between this and any STI I'm used to driving. It feels about the same, but one thing that's really noticeable is the fact that there's way less body roll than a typical stock suspension STI would have. So it almost drives like this car is on coilovers. I know everyone talks about the Bilstein dampers in this car being too harsh, and I've seen a lot of journalists talk about that stuff. But in my opinion, I think it's actually really well set up. Now, you keep in mind this is not a really bumpy road. If you're going through, you know, LA or Chicago with a lot of potholes, you might feel differently about it. But so far, my impression is that Subaru definitely tuned this car for the racetrack, and a smooth back road like this feels pretty similar, and it's exactly how I'd want the car to be set up. All right, we'll do a little second gear pull, see how it feels. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's been a while since I've ripped a STI, but it does feel like every other STI I've driven. Tons of mid-range torque, and it's punchy in the mid-range, and then it kind of falls off a little up top. But with the short gear ratios, it's really fun. You get to do a lot of shifting, and it's definitely plenty fast for the type of roads we're driving. I'm really glad I got a chance to drive this thing, honestly. It feels like a more tuned, more track-focused version of the STI. So I think these things are really special, and if you don't want to go the aftermarket route to making your STI a good track car, and you can find a Series White STI, I think this would be a ton of fun right out of the box, and there's really nothing you'd need to do to it other than some brake pads and some fluid. All right, so that's pretty much gonna do it for our video review of the Series White STI. And beyond the paint job and the cool wheels and just the way the car looks, I really do like the way that this car drives, the way it handles, and its suspension tuning. It still feels relevant even in today's market. So if you are able to find one of these cars, I would say it's still a good buy even 4 years later. With that said, if you guys like this video, don't forget to drop it a like, and I'll see you in the next one.